Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would talk about this little situation that I found particularly interesting. And if you've been around my channel long enough, you know all in all that I primarily talk about boxing talk. Boxing is usually my main expertise when it comes down to it. That usually is my main breakdown. But there's a few other sports that I tend to talk about as well. And probably a certain amount of you may have seen my Novak Djokovic video, and in my opinion, saying that he is, at least certainly in that conversation now, as the greatest men's tennis player of all time. And if you don't believe that he's in that conversation, then he would at least have to be in the conversation, actually, at least at the current moment in time. It probably would have to be quite definitive that he is the best and the greatest out of the big three. He is the only one that has won every Grand Slam at least twice when it comes down to it. He has the winning record pretty much over every great player of his generation. He has 20 Grand Slams. He has the most overall, I believe, Master 1000 tournaments. Novak Djokovic, of course, he is an all-time great player. And I do think that there is a certain amount of stigma against that of a Novak Djokovic, because Novak Djokovic, when it comes to tennis, and I'm not saying that tennis does not try to promote him in somewhat of a great light, but it's very, very obvious, especially with the American media and a certain amount of other of the European media as well. They don't like Novak Djokovic as much. And why do I think all in all that that is? Because Novak Djokovic came around on the scene a little bit later. And of course, no one wants to see some person that especially, all in all, kind of just came out of nowhere and wasn't super known early days, when Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer were super duper dominant. No one wants to see someone like a Novak Djokovic, or at least not a lot of people want to see Novak Djokovic break their records. But he's pretty much already pretty much broken almost every single one of their records. And it pretty much is undeniable at this point that Mr. Novak Djokovic, in my opinion, he is the greatest out of all of them. Now, of course, a certain amount of Roger Federer fans and Rafa Nadal fans, they'll tell you, oh, well, he doesn't have the class of them, he doesn't have this, he doesn't that. I don't care about any of that. I'm not a person, like I said. You could be a murderer behind the scenes, and as long as you did what you did on the court, just talking specifically about tennis here, all I count is the accomplishments, the statistics, when it comes down to it, how big you came up mentally. And when I just take a look at everything, all in all, Novak Djokovic, he just has the greatest amount of things compared to those players. It just is what it is. I think that both of them are close. They're all somewhat in the same league. But Novak Djokovic, at the end of the day, he just sits at a different table compared to those two. He just has to. But of course, this recent conversation, or this recent thing that came up about Mr. Novak Djokovic with this vaccine situation. And I'm only going to be talking about, from my perspective, I can't give you a serious breakdown when it comes down to it. I can't tell you what I personally think the government is doing, or, with 100% accuracy, because I don't really know what goes on behind the scenes. What I can tell you is this: the last time that I did talk about a COVID-19 vaccine video, it was about the Kirk Cousins situation at the beginning of the NFL season. And the last time that I talked about it, YouTube removed my video. Now, I'm all about, when it comes down to it, I'm not a person, all in all, that truly advocates the COVID-19 vaccine. I'm not a person that's avidly against it either. You do whatever you want to do. I'm not a person overall that is telling you overall what to do. But what I am saying is this: do I believe that Novak Djokovic overall getting, quote unquote deported yesterday, or do I believe that apparently his visa entry getting declined into Australia yesterday, do I believe that it 100% has something to do overall with them trying to figure out if his medical exemption was false, or do I think that it's their way of taking it out of Novak Djokovic because they think that he's had some sort of loophole? 100% yes, I do. No doubt about it, whatever in my mind, or whatsoever in my mind. We're going to talk about it in this video. And all in all, we're going to review this video, I believe, by the Tennis Channel. It should be very interesting. Let's get into it.
The biggest story in tennis right now surrounding world number one Novak Djokovic. His visa has been denied and he is expected to be leaving Australia. We do not know if he will be able to compete in the Australian Open this year. It's been a chaotic 12 hours for the world number one at the Melbourne airport. This is how it all went down. Djokovic arrived in Melbourne around 11:30 p.m. local time last night. He had the incorrect visa and was detained at the airport. He was questioned for hours about his documentation. Armed guards reportedly stood outside his room. He had his phone taken away for around 3 hours. His father threatened to take to the streets and fight. And the very latest is that he has been sent to a quarantine hotel. Greg Hunt, Australia's health minister, confirmed.
Let me say this specifically when it comes down to it. And some of you may ask me overall what my opinion on the COVID-19 vaccine is. Listen, I don't really have a specific stance. If you want to get your COVID-19 vaccine, that's up to you. If you don't want to get it, that's up to you. What I will tell you is this: have I personally got it? No, I have not. Why is that? I don't personally trust it. And a certain amount of people all know, they may say, oh, that's dumb or all this is. Listen, at the end of the day, personally, at least with me, I do have to be careful what I put into my body when it comes to medicine, because with certain shots, especially, for example, flu shots, I do have certain reactions. I may not get put into anaphylactic shock or anything of that sort, but I will get lightheaded, almost to the point to where I may pass out, or I also may get high-level anxiety, meaning panic attacks or something within that sort. So I do have to be very, very careful what shots I put into my body. And I have heard a certain amount of results overall that I do believe they had tried to hide, all in all, about that of the COVID-19 vaccine. I'm not saying that it's like that with everybody. But have I heard certain side effects overall that certain people have had ever since they've had the COVID-19 vaccine? Yes, I have. What I will say is this: do I believe that the government is hiding overall certain statistics? Do I believe, all in all, that they are hiding, certain facts that the vaccine overall, that they're not releasing? Yes, I do. It is what it is. Do I also believe that this vaccine is being more heavily pushed than any other vaccine that I personally ever seen in the history, that at least personally when I've been around? Yes, I do. And I don't know exactly what that reason is. I don't know, all in all, if it's something overall for the mentality of people. But what I will say is this: I don't personally trust it. It is what it is when it comes down to it. Certain people, they may look at me as, unintelligent for that. But at the end of the day, obviously, I'm not the only one with that type of worry. And, there are certain athletes out there, especially, that also worry about it. And they have the right to worry about what they inject into their bodies as well. They do have the right of freedom of choice. Novak Djokovic is not the only athlete that is worried about this. Aaron Rodgers is not a person overall that wanted to get the vaccine. Antonio Brown. All right. Andrew Wiggins is a person that did not want to get the vaccine. Kyrie Irving is a person that did not want to get the vaccine. So what I'll say is this: these athletes know something, I believe, in my opinion, that the public somewhat does not know. Now, a certain amount of people may argue, well, it could just be overall that they don't want their freedom of speech, or overall they just want the freedom of consent. It could be that, but what I'll say is this: do I think that something else deeper is going on here that I can't necessarily explain? Yes, I do. I think something is going deeper on here, whether it be basically overall, the government's imposing their will on the people when it comes down to it, and basically somewhat taking freedoms away. I do believe that something deeper is going on here. I can't tell you exactly what's going on here, because I'm not a person that breaks those sort of things down overall, maybe like some other channels would when it comes down to it, and I don't know where to exactly get that information. But what I will say is this: I think overall that it is very, very interesting how badly they've been trying to push this vaccine, almost to the point where basically they've been trying to impose martial law. I mean, I don't want to really compare it to that. I'm not trying to over-exaggerate, but it's almost gotten to the point to where, of course, the U.S. President Joe Biden has basically said, all in all, that if you don't get the COVID-19 vaccine, you could get possibly fired from your job. And unfortunately, certain people, of course, who are in that position, either you're going to have to get a medical exemption, or you're going to have to get the COVID-19 vaccine. And unfortunately for Mr. Novak Djokovic, if the medical exemption does not go through, he may eventually have to get the COVID-19 vaccine. And I understand, if I were in his position, I would not want the shot either. But at the end of the day, if you do have a job, if you're involved in a career, if you're involved in a job where they do require it, I do somewhat understand it. And of course, looking at it at another side as well, I do understand that businesses, they would want to protect their product by possibly not, the disease not spreading, because of course it is extremely contagious. But all in all, like I said, I do believe that athletes should have the right as well to inject whatever they want to into their bodies. It just is what it is. But at the same time, once again, if you're a business, when it comes down to it, and, if you're involved in a business, all in all, to where, basically, it's take the COVID-19 vaccine or don't participate, you may have to select one of the two. It's unfortunate, in my opinion, but it is what it is. Sometimes you do have to do what the businesses tell you to do, which, of course, I don't think is always, completely right, but it just is what it is.
that Novak Djokovic failed to provide appropriate standards of proof to enter the country, and he will be sent home. Paul, what do you make of all this?
Which lens you want it? Which lens you want it from?
You can go from near, far, and in between.
I'll tell you, no, it's startling. It's been an amazing 24 hours, and for Novak Djokovic, this has been.
And I seen what Mr. Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer, I seen all in all what they have had to say. Let me say this. For those of you overall that may watch my channel, you may know of this channel already. You may overall have viewed his channel. Go ahead and view a channel named Chronicles of Judo 144. Chronicles of Judo 144 breaks things down, at least when it comes down to politics and governments and a certain amount of other things. He breaks things down overall, usually, at least in that terms, a hell of a lot better than what I would. But listen, one thing that he says overall, and I've always believed this as well, because I seen with Rafael Nadal when it came down to, he said that, Novak Djokovic, and of course, Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer, they are pro-vaccine, I believe, when it comes down to it. But you cannot trust a certain amount of those players, and it is no coincidence that Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal and LeBron James and, a certain amount of these athletes that are very, very heavily pushed by ESPN. You know why that is? Because they're all liberal shills. They're all puppets when it comes down to it. So basically whatever the liberal governments want to push, no matter whether it be this COVID-19 vaccine or, certain ideologies, whether it be the transsexuals, the homosexuals, or a certain amount of other things. And if that's you, then cool. But at the end of the day, not everyone follows those ideologies. It just is what it is. So basically a certain amount of those athletes, when it comes down to it, they're basically puppets when it comes down to it. It just is what it is. So Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, especially anyone that you see sponsored by Nike, Colin Kaepernick, any one of these dudes, they're all liberal pawns. It just is what it is. They're all liberal pawns, every single one of them. The majority of shit that they say, you cannot trust. And do I think that that's also a big part of the reason why maybe the media could be partially after Novak Djokovic as well? And also Kyrie Irving and a certain amount of other individual thinkers, people who maybe have not fallen in to the liberal ideologies. I think that is a big part of it. Because the media, especially in that of the U.S., I do believe that they are primarily liberal, and I'm not a person that goes along with either side. I'm not a person that's conservative. I'm not a person that's liberal. But what I will say is this, my experiences with liberals and overall the certain liberal media and liberal governments, watch out for them. Because everyone has a motive for something. And liberals, when it comes down to it, a lot of the times, they promise something overall that is great, but a lot of the times, all in all, something with malice, overall intent is behind it. And a lot of the times liberals, they will make promises, but stab a lot of the people overall in the back or push ideologies that cause a lot of confusion. But it is what it is.
A tumultuous turn of events. So many different things. He thought he did all the right things by applying for his medical exemption as per the rules by the government. And once he gets there, it turns out he didn't put his visa together properly, which to me seems a little bit of a stretch, but obviously.
Yeah, bullshit. He didn't put his visa together properly. Bullshit. They're trying to take it out of Novak Djokovic because the Australian government overall, like I said, they're very obviously trying to push something on him. But like I said, at the end of the day, you do have to respect cultural borders. So at the end of the day, it's unfortunate for Novak Djokovic. I do believe that athletes do have the freedom of choice, that they do deserve that. But if you are in a company or if you are going to an Australian Open and they do require for you to get the COVID-19 vaccine, if it is that important to you, you may unfortunately have to get the shot. It just is what it is. And I'm not saying that, that would be an easy decision to do for Mr. Novak Djokovic. But Novak Djokovic, unfortunately for him, he may only have one of two options. And that overall is to get the COVID-19 vaccine. Or when it comes down to it, if it truly is not that worth it to you, don't play in the Australian Open. There is 3 other Grand Slam tournaments, but from what I hear, there also is a possibility that maybe perhaps Novak Djokovic, he may not be able to play in the U.S. Open or Wimbledon either. So like I said, one could certainly argue that, that tennis is just trying to protect their business, that basically they just don't want to outbreak and basically they don't want to lose money because if the COVID-19 outbreak were to happen, then of course a certain amount of the players, would not be able to play. But do I think all in all when it comes down to do I think that they are trying to push something, not only all in all on the regular people, but that on the athletes as well, and basically trying to get everyone with that type of mentality? Yes, I do. I think that they are pushing something behind the scenes, although I don't necessarily know what.
There are rules that you have to abide by. Look, there are players that are in there that have gotten their medical clearance that have not been vaccinated. So there are a few that are there. So clearly something's going on behind the scenes with the visa, with what's going on there.
So if there is a few there, when it comes down to it, that are unvaccinated, and if they were able to get a medical exemption, once again, so that means one of two things. Either the Australian government is taking it out on Mr. Novak Djokovic when it comes down to it because they're pissed off all in all that he's there. And like I said, could it also be a possibility because the media does not like him? It could be. It could be. Who knows? But, when it comes down, like I said, or when it comes down to it, they say that he doesn't have enough proof. But from what I heard, Mr. Novak Djokovic got a medical exemption from an Australian doctor or overall from an Australian medical facility. So we'll see what happens.
There has been a public outcry. This is a country, in particular a state, the state of Victoria, that has been locked up basically for over 250 days last year. So the public did not warm to the idea of Novak getting an exemption. And when you're on the pedestal as the #1 player in the world, you are under a microscope, you're in a fishbowl, and it is very difficult to navigate. I totally understand the public's reaction. I don't know all the inner workings of the details. I do know that there is a protest currently going on by his legal team to try to figure out if they can reconcile somehow. But I am also told that he's getting ready to get on an airplane and be sent home. So I don't think this story is over. I think it is quite incredible, and I feel bad for everybody involved because it's a lot of what it seems like to me is a lot of miscommunication. And when you open things up to subjectivity, this happens.
A wild timeline of events, Taylor. What's your reaction to all of that?
I mean, I don't think I can say it any better than Paul did. But I mean, as a player and someone who has been to Australia and has gone through the visa process, it's not the simplest process, but I mean, it's just very difficult. I understand both sides, both as a player.
Let me say this. Do I think that it is a coincidence that all of a sudden Novak Djokovic has visa problems? All of a sudden that, Australia, they seem to have it out for Novak Djokovic, or at least wondering, if that visa or if that exemption is 100% authentic. No, I don't think it's a coincidence at all.
And you trying to find a way to just get there and play. You want to go and you want to play tennis. Novak Djokovic wants to defend his title. He wants to get to 21 Grand Slams. I'm sure that's what's on his mind. But also the citizens of Victoria who have been locked down for so long, they don't want to see somebody get around the rules. They've had to abide by the rules and be on such a straight and narrow for so long that when they're allowed to open up and get a chance to enjoy sports again and view all of these amazing athletes, they want to make sure that they're protected, that they're safe, and that, everyone is following what they've had to do. So I get both sides. I have compassion for everybody involved. And like Paul said, I mean, it's very difficult. And these are just the times that we live in right now. I'm interested to see how this unfolds, but sad for Novak Djokovic. I mean, I was looking forward to watching him play and hopefully defend his title.
Yeah, it's tough for all parties involved. We do not know if he can reapply for the correct visa and then re-enter the country. It's a developing story. We will have much more on this throughout TC Live, and you can get the very latest always on tennis.com.
Anyways, that appears to be about it for this video. But what do I personally think is going to happen? We'll see. I'm not necessarily sure. If I had to guess, more than likely, we'll see if Novak Djokovic gets the COVID-19 vaccine. But if I had to guess, more than likely, Novak Djokovic is probably not going to play. But we'll see all in all what happens. It should be very interesting. And we will continue with the storyline later on. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Thanks so much for watching. And I'll talk to you all later.